Hello, hello, hello. I've got a lot of things to talk about in this video, but first and foremost, I really hope you're all doing okay in this current climate, with the whole quarantine and stuff. Especially if you must go out to work, I hope you're all doing okay. Also, I am currently working on some special things like a video on the classic Resident Evil 2, which I've been playing recently, I know, pretty fitting, and a short animation that I hope I can get done soon. Besides all of this though, having recently watched the real-time fan-dub games series on Sonic for the 11th time on a row, I've been recommended more and more Sonic videos and ultimately decided that I wanted to get more and more into the series that I've loved since I was a kid. Now, as a kid, I unfortunately didn't have a Sega console, but I did have a PlayStation in which I played repeatedly Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Riders. I remember never being able to finish Sonic Unleashed last level, and so to this day I have never finished that game. Maybe I will in the future, who knows. But anyway, having decided that I wanted to get into Sonic more and more, I thought, why not start in the beginning? The start of the series, of course. And so these past few days, I've been playing the original trilogy, quote-unquote, of Sonic games. Although, it's more of a quadrilogy, considering Sonic 3 and Knuckles is 2 games combined. But anyway, I've always heard nothing but absolute praise for the original Sonic games, and I'm pretty excited for this. So, let's see if the Sonic games are as great as the people say they are, and if they are, let's see what made them great. I won't be talking about these games in order because the general gameplay and objectives remain pretty much the same throughout the 3 games. I didn't really want to make a series of videos on Sonic 1, 2, and 3 because of this reason, because the games are pretty similar between each other. But however, let's address the general objectives and gameplay mechanics of the 3 games just for the sake of laying them all out. Sonic 1 starts out pretty basic. You got a menu screen, you press start, and boom, you're in the game. For Sonic 1, the movements are overall pretty basic. You can move to the sides, look up and down, and jump, and that's pretty much all you will be doing. Sonic 2 adds up more things, like a menu, an actual menu, and things you can hold and climb onto. Sonic 3 follows this up by not only adding the menu and adding more things you can climb and hold onto, but adding save states, which is incredible. This is something that Sonic 1 and 2 definitely did not have, and considering that Sonic 3 and Knuckles is a pretty long game in comparison to 1 and 2, it makes sense that they would put something like this on the game. Now, the objectives of the games are all really simple. You have to get to the end of the level in less than 10 minutes, collect rings, and defeat enemies on your way, and defeat Dr. Robotnik and prevent him from getting all the Chaos Emeralds. Dr. Robotnik, or Eggman, has invaded the island you live in, and is using the animals to act as some sort of batteries for his robots. Not only that, but is also in search of the Chaos Emeralds to further his plans of world domination, and it's Sonic's job to stop him. The first game is overall an extremely solid experience. Along the way, there won't be just enemies, but also some traps or bottomless pits in your way. These get more and more difficult as the levels progress, and by the end of the 3rd game, it's almost near impossible to complete the game without dying at least twice in a single level. At first, the enemies and spikes are all manageable, although you have to move very slow if you want to clear out the level without losing your rings. Contrary to popular belief and Sonic's own phrase, going too fast in this game will get you nothing but game overs. The levels get increasingly hard as the games progress, and like I said, by the end of the 3rd game, you will be going as low as you possibly can. The placement of enemies and traps gets to levels so unfair and unforgiving that will possibly make you want to break the controller in half and then some. Some people say that whoever complains about this is a weak millennial who can't handle hard games, but the truth is, no, these games are extremely hard and unforgiving, and that's not entirely a bad thing. The problem is when you advertise your game and character to be extremely fast and make that a selling point, but then punish speed in your game by adding spikes or enemies that are almost unavoidable if you don't know where they are before. And that's kind of where the problem lies. I don't really like dabbling too much into the background of these games. I mostly just check what I have in my hands, but it's kind of inevitable for these titles. Sonic was made in a time where Mario was the new revolutionary thing, and they wanted to sell you something that you would keep replaying over and over, something unique and different, not just a simple arcade experience like the original Mario and the countless clones that were popping all over the place at that time. And they did this not only by implementing a whole new gimmick about going fast, but also by making the level layout very hard to traverse if you just advanced mindlessly, and adding more paths to the level than just a simple straight path forward. In Sonic, you can go up and down and left and right, and some levels require you to go directly to the left or down to advance through it. Now, I don't know much about the history of games, much less platformers, but I'm pretty sure this was something that at the time wasn't done all that much. Where am I going with this? Well, it's pretty simple, really. I, for example, have the privilege of having save states in emulators, but back then, if you died, that's game over. You have to replay the entire thing from a checkpoint or the entire game altogether. And what does all of this mean? It means that if you died a lot and had a hard time, you were going to replay levels more than once, which means you will probably remember pretty well where stuff is, which means you can go fast because you know where everything is and you know what to expect. TLDR, if you want to go fast, you have to earn that speed. Because let's face it, how fun would it be if the Sonic games were just holding the right stick and watching the blue hedgehog run real fast to the right, and that's the whole game? No, there has to be some sort of challenge, and precisely that's where the challenge comes from. The challenge is learning the level layout, the enemy placements, and the reward is going fast. For people like me, this seems like such a pain in the ass. I'm the kind of person who is really distracted and really impatient, and throughout my playthrough of Sonic, I was using save states left and right. I was getting tired of getting hit by enemies once and again, falling into unfair traps, falling into bottomless pits, and I was getting frustrated. It got to a point where I just wanted to get these games done as quick as I could and write an angry rant about how these games suck because they're incredibly hard and unforgiving. And while I still believe that these games are extremely hard and unforgiving, I don't have that negative attitude about it anymore. Because I had a weird moment where I went back into Sonic 1 and 2 after finishing 3, and I had a way easier time, not only going really fast through the levels, but also knowing where things were and exploring new places or getting into areas that I didn't find before. And I think that's the beauty of these games in the end. I think that's where the sense of earning the speed comes from, the sense of finally overcoming a difficult level. It always feels unfair when you're going fast and then a random enemy projectile hits you and you just drop all of your rings to the floor. But when you know where that enemy is and when that projectile is coming, it feels so good knowing that and just straight up denying the enemy the chance to get you and keeping all of your rings. It's not for everyone, for sure it's not for everyone. And some people like me, like I said, are way too impatient or way too distracted to actually sit down and learn the layout and enemy placement. But when you finally do, not only does it feel really good and makes the whole experience a lot more fun, but it also makes it easier. All of this doesn't mean that it's a requirement for you to die a lot of times to defeat a Sonic level. It just means that if you have a hard time with these levels, eventually you're going to become really good at it. But it is definitely not a requirement. The levels are going to be a little more hard if you go head on, but you can definitely beat the entire game in just one sitting, if you're good enough. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some areas that are awful or straight up impossible. I remember having a hard time on the Casino Zone, the Sky Fortress Zone, Mushroom Hill, and the Desert Palace Zone. The casino layout was just hell for my eyes. The Carnival Night Zone in Sonic 3 was not that bad, except for a really specific moment, which I actually found out isn't famous for being confusing as hell. But the Casino Zone in Sonic 2? Forget about it. I got a very awful sensory overload, and the fact that I lose focus extremely easy, and the level layout being confusing as hell, this is the worst level in the entire game for sure, personally of course. The Sky Fortress Zone has way too many bottomless pits, and while I get it, that's kind of the whole deal, I just had a really hard time with this area, and I feel like it's the most unfair one. It only has one act, so really, it's not that bad. The Labyrinth Zone I fucking hated. I don't mind going slow to be careful and learn the layout of the level, but why make the whole damn level so slow and floaty? Sonic already feels really floaty by default in the land when you compare his movement to the movements of other characters and platformers of the time like Mario. His jump and movements sometimes feel like he's moving on ice constantly and very floaty, but the underwater levels just amplify this by a shit ton and I hate it. I'm sorry, but these underwater sections move way too slow for me to like them. I really hate these parts, and the boss fight of this level is even more rage-inducing, because you not only have to follow Eggman to the top while the water rises up, but also try to dodge traps, and it makes it nearly impossible to manage all of these things at the same time. It's really stressful. Mushroom Hill Zone and Desert Palace Zone I don't particularly hate, but I had a hard time because I reached sections on those levels where I had no idea what to do or where to go, and had to either restart or watch a gameplay on YouTube to see what the hell I had to do. Like, seriously? I had to do this? It's not all that bad though. I had fun with most of these zones. I especially remember Starlight Zone. Trust me, after defeating a Labyrinth Zone, any fucking zone would have been the best, but I got something even better. Starlight Zone just feels so peaceful and dreamlike, and the music is just fucking beautiful too. There's something so special about it. I don't know if it's because the previous zone was really bad in comparison, but the music and the city with the night sky on the background, it's just so peaceful. This area is something else entirely. Every final zone is either a land base or a sky base Eggman has, and with each game, these ones get more and more gigantic in size. And while the final fight on Sonic 1 isn't all that hard, this theme is just... you can't forget this theme once you hear it. Sonic 1 and 3 give you some levels in which you can go really fast, but these are mostly roller coaster type parts of the zone, or zones in which all you gotta do is run to the right. These are all great, don't get me wrong though, but the challenge or change in layout is what makes going fast exciting. Still, these parts are really cool and are an amazing display of the speeds that Sonic can reach. It's incredible. Sonic 2 introduces Miles Tails Prower to the cast. He's a small yellow fox with 2 tails that he can rotate to fly and go at high speeds. Most of the time he'll act as a second Sonic, repeating your inputs with a slight delay. But the best part is that if you have a second controller, you can play with a friend, which is a really cool addition. Sonic 3 introduces Knuckles the Echidna. Technically, Knuckles is introduced in 2, but he's a secret character you can play as if you utilize the unique lock-on mechanic the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge has. But he's playable in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Knuckles is very slow until you gain some speed by just running, but he's got some unique mechanics like gliding and being able to climb walls and destroy rocks. Sonic's movement list grows with each game too. In Sonic 2 you can gain speed by crawling up into a ball and pressing the action button, and the way I found about this was really cool. I was stuck in Hilltop Zone, I believe, and there was this loop that went straight to the ground. I wasn't able to get a head start because there was a spike on the floor, so I couldn't get enough speed to get through it. But then I saw Tails curl up into a ball and start spinning around. It was like the game was giving me a tip when it saw that I was hanging around an area for too long, and it was incredible. Sonic 3 adds a small attack you can do by pressing the jump button in the air. This will create a small shield around you that you can use to damage enemies, and it is extremely useful. Sonic 3 really is the best game out of the trilogy in terms of visuals and movement. Sonic's movements just feel extremely complete in comparison to the other 2 games in which it's pretty much just jumping and running. Speaking of, there's a little something that gets added in the latter 2 games too. Special stages in Sonic 1 are places you can go to get the Chaos Emeralds before Eggman gets them. If you don't, you get the quote-unquote bad ending in which he gains them and completes his plans, although this isn't explicitly shown. If you get the good ending, however, you return the Chaos Emeralds that were lost to the island, and they restore the island in return. To get the Chaos Emeralds, you must enter special stages, and each special stage is very different in every game. In Sonic 1, it's a very confusing maze-like stage. In Sonic 2, it's a half-pipe that you must traverse through getting rings and dodging bombs, which isn't really all that easy to do when Tails keeps devouring every fucking bomb he sees, god damn it. Sonic 3 adds a very interesting levels in which you must get rings and collect blue spheres to get to the Chaos Emerald. It's really interesting, although a bit hard to get right. However, even if getting all of them is a pain in the ass, trust me when I say that it's worth every goddamn second, because once you get all of the piss rocks, you finally unlock Super Sonic. Super Sonic sounds cool, but let me tell ya, it's much more cooler than you think. When you unlock Supersonic, you become invisible to any and all damage. You literally fly through the levels at high speeds, and the boss fights become a joke with how easy it is to defeat them after getting this form. Now, in Sonic 3, after finishing all of the original Sonic 3 levels and going into the Sonic and Knuckles part of the game, you kind of lose this form when you enter the Hidden Palace zone. To get it back, you must basically get all the new Super Emeralds that will replace your Super form with Hypersonic. Hypersonic is what you would expect. It's Supersonic, but even better. You get all of the nice perks of Supersonic except even higher speeds, and a special attack that defeats all enemies on screen with a bright flash. You also glow with every color of the emeralds instead of glowing just yellow. In my playthrough of Sonic 3, I wasn't able to get this form because I was so tired of the special stages that were really hard to do, and just decided to finish the game as it is. But getting the form is really worth it, and you can even get the form in the very first stage of the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game. The only parts about this form I found extremely quote-unquote bad was in Sonic 2, because zones like Metropolis Zone and the Sky Fortress Zone require specific platforming, and you can imagine that having Supersonic on while doing these sections it's not pretty. And it can frustrate you to no end, but the rest of the time, having this transformation is extremely worth it. I've talked about Eggman spaces and fights getting increasingly bigger in size, but they also get bigger on scale. The first game is pretty self-contained in nature, meaning that the only thing in danger is the island which you protect. The second game takes you to space, and the third game ends with a fight against a giant Eggman ship robot while you're in the supersonic form and are flying across space to avoid Eggman, getting the Master Emerald. Each game ups the stakes more than the last, and by the end of the third game, you feel like you can take on anything, except the Labyrinth Zone. No one can take on that. The boss fights of every game feel incredible, and the ways in which you can defeat them gets even better and more interesting with each game. The boss from Starlight Zone stands out to me particularly because you have to either propel yourself towards Eggman with the seesaw scattered across the floor, or propel one of Eggman's bombs towards him to do damage. It's really interesting and challenging to get right, but once you see him blow up, it's satisfying as hell. The boss in Hydro City Zone in Sonic 3 has a similar mechanic. In here, you're completely covered in water, and Eggman comes down with his ship to rise up the water towards him. After this, he will run around the screen throwing bombs that will create small explosions which you can jump onto to damage him. It's a really fun fight. The boss fights in these games get increasingly more fun with each installment, and while some are harder than others, none of them I have any issue with. They're all pretty much tons of fun. I've already talked about it briefly before, but the zones and music in these games are just insanely good. These games have no shortage of different areas that you explore. You go from beautiful paradise-looking mountaintops to underground labyrinths, to ice caves, to urban areas, jungles, space stations, outer space. These games have really interesting areas to explore, and the music accompanying each area is just delightful. Something every Sonic game does right, even if it's a terrible game, is the music. And let me tell you, these tracks are beautiful. I made the mistake of playing through these games with podcasts or videos in the background, and let me tell you, don't do that, please. The music in these games are beautiful and will help you recognize and remember areas much better. Anyone can remember the hell that Labyrinth Zone was when this track starts playing. And anyone can remember the hype that this soundtrack causes when you reach the boss. The music in these games is something special, and it gives a lot of personality and memorability to each stage and fight in a level beyond words. It's something you must experience for yourself, truly. So, having played all 3 original Sonic games for the first time in my life, I think they're pretty cool. I think they're pretty great. I unfortunately didn't have the chance to experience them by myself as a kid, so I don't have them as ingrained in my mind as some others who have played them as kids, but I can recognize that effort, passion, and love was put into these games. Except Labyrinth Zone, whoever designed Labyrinth Zone, you should be ashamed of yourself. These games are hard, really hard, but they're not impossible to beat, and even if you lose all of your lives and get a game over, playing through all the levels again isn't such a pain in the ass when you already know what to do and where to go, and they're even less of a pain in the ass when you got all the emeralds and you got Supersonic unlocked. Just try not to play them all back to back and give you some time to refresh your palate with other games, or just take a small break, because I played these games all back to back and I became so frustrated because I couldn't focus or because I lost all the time that I began to hate them. And honestly, I don't think these games deserve any hate at all. They're extremely fun platformers that add interesting twists to their gameplays with the whole aspect of going really fast. If you're looking for a place to get into Sonic, then obviously just play these games in order of release. If you just want a fun platformer and you don't give a shit about Sonic, play Sonic 3 and Knuckles, because it's the one that holds the most movement options and characters, and it's in my opinion the hardest one. I've left out some stuff out of the script, some in purpose because I don't think they would add anything to the conversation or to let you discover them. So I apologize if I didn't speak of something that you thought was important to the games. But having said all of this, what do I think of these games? Why do I think they worked? Well, I think that the Sonic Trilogy of games is a solid and challenging platforming experience that implemented and brought new things into the platforming genre, and to this day stands as the best of its franchise and the platforming genre overall. I think that these Sonic games are extremely fun. They have some hiccups here and there, but it's nothing you can't overlook because overall the experience is just a blast. They are really fun games, and even if you don't really care about Sonic that much, I personally think you should at least try them, give them a chance, because maybe you're gonna find them really fun. But having said all of that, that's pretty much all the insight I have right now on Sonic. I may make some other videos on other Sonic games that I still have yet to play, but for the moment, I've only played these 3 original games. I think they were really fun, and I can see why people really like them and why people compare them to the newer and, in their opinion, worse games. But just really quick to close down the video, I really want to mention again that I'm working on a Resident Evil 2 Classic video. I'm also working on an animation that I really hope I can get done pretty soon. If you want to see what I'm up to and you want to check out my drawings, check out my Twitter. If you just want to check out my drawings, check out my Deviantart or my Newgrounds. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.